Hey everyone, Shaun Stevenson, author of the Throne series here, and it's time to talk a little Fear Street because I have read a couple of Christmassy themed Fear Street books over the holiday, and we need to talk about them, especially The Best Friend. Oh my word. I have a lot of complicated thoughts about this book, so let's dive right in. So The Best Friend, this is in the Fear Street series by R.L. Stine. And a lot of the Fear Street books, some of them have recurring characters, some don't. There are a couple recurring characters who show up here kind of in the background who are in other books. But this one is not really related to any other books except for apparently The Best Friend 2, which is another one I have not read. So I don't for sure know that if it's a continuation of this story. I don't exactly know how that would work, but it could. But this one kind of stands on its own, and it's light Christmas. So first of all, if you're looking for a Christmas Fear Street book, this one is very light on the Christmas. It's like more in the background of the whole story than a focus of the story. Christmas is like kind of taking place while this story is happening, but it's not about Christmas, if that makes sense. So in this story, you have this girl named Becca, and Becca is hanging out with her two friends when all of a sudden, this girl named Honey bursts into her house, comes running up the stairs and is hugging Becca, is telling Becca how excited she is to see her, how she's so excited to be back in Shadyside, and is just excited for them to rekindle their friendship because they were best friends when they were little. So here's the thing. After Honey leaves that initial meeting, Becca's two other friends say, "Who was that? Was she an old friend of yours?" But Becca says, "I don't know who she is." And that is the setup for this book. And I thought that was a great setup for this story. Now, I will say, this is not the first time that a story like this has been done. And while I was reading this, I was highly reminded of a Heart to Heart episode from the Heart to Heart TV series from the 70s and 80s. Heart to Heart, if you don't know what it is this old 70s and 80s sort of murder mystery show, but kind of action-y drama comedy show that was back in the day. It's kind of like along the lines of like Charlie's Angels and those kinds of shows from back in the 70s and 80s. And Heart to Heart, there are there's this couple, Jonathan and Jennifer Hart, and they're millionaires, and they have this guy named Max who is like their butler. They have this dog named Freeway, and they live in this mansion out in the like North Hollywood Hills. And so they have like all these different murders they stumble across, and they solve the murders and figure out what's going on, that kind of a thing. And there's one particular episode where there is this lady who is obsessed with Jonathan Hart to the point of she wants to kill Jennifer Hart and get rid of her so she can take Jennifer Hart's place. And so that episode of Heart to Heart reminded me so much of this book. There's some different plot elements, but some of the basic pieces were really similar to this particular Fear Street book. And I will say, Becca is a great character for Fear Street. She's not like a Reva. If you've read Silent Night, which I now have, you know what I'm talking about. She's not a Reva, but she's also not exactly super nice, if that makes sense. Like sometimes she's like kind of mean, but she's also trying to like defend herself in a lot of ways because Honey is invading her life. There are definitely some kind of creepy moments. I feel like this book, it was not really scary. It was more a little creepy. Like you're thinking like, ooh, that is real disturbing. Like what's happening in the background, like the psychosis that is taking place in Becca as she's like, am I forgetting Honey? Were we really friends? Like what's actually going on here? Because there are a lot of unanswered questions about that friendship. Was it real or was it not? You have to read the book to find out. I will say though, I feel like the ending of this one, no spoilers, but I will just say the ending of this one to me was not quite satisfying. I did not exactly love the ending of this book. I felt like it kind of left a lot of things hanging, which is why I'm curious about The Best Friend 2, if that picks up this storyline or if it does a different storyline or what's happening there. Because I was wondering about that. If there's some answered questions in The Best Friend 2 that are not answered here. You do get some answers to things, but most of your questions that you have are probably not going to be answered. And if that's frustrating to you, I would say skip this one, because that's not what this book is about, getting all the answers. This book is really about the ways that people and friends can have a hold on us and can really influence us or impact us and change the way that we view situations and view ourselves and view others. And I think that that was a very interesting thing for R.L. Stine to explore. But I also will say, I don't think he gave us anything meaningful to say about that. You have that as a through line throughout this book, but there's not anything at the end of this book where you're thinking, wow, that was a really interesting thing to say about that, or I'm glad that you brought that up. It just was more of a background thing, almost, I think, something that R.L. Stine wrote in by accident and didn't know he was writing in. I really feel like now that I've read a lot of R.L. Stine books, I don't think he often plans to have things he's saying through the storyline. I think he doesn't think about that often, and those things sort of happen accidentally in his writing. And I think that if he were to take some of those things and tie them up a tiny bit more, his books would be that much better. And I know here I am sitting here critiquing R.L. Stine's writing style, and he's a best-selling author, he's probably a millionaire, he's sold so many books. But I do think that, I kept thinking about it this entire time. After I'd finished this book, I was thinking about it, and I was like, oh man, if you had just tied that together a tiny bit and tied that together a tiny bit, that would have made a really interesting storyline that you were setting up here. Versus this one, I feel like just kind of ends. It ends in a very interesting place that is shocking. There were definitely some shocking moments that I gasped out loud and was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that just happened. So that definitely was really good, but I think it just kind of ended. And we just finished with this storyline, and we're left, like I said, with a lot of hanging questions of, well, what about this? And what about that? And what was going to happen with this? And what were you going to do with that? But that's not what the story's about. The story's really about this descent of Becca into, am I remembering this? Am I not remembering this? Did I block this from my memory? Am I making up these memories? What is happening to me? That's what's really going on in this book. So this one, I would say, not really scary. It was more a little creepy and unnerving. It's really an unnerving Fear Street book. That's the best way to say it. So at the end of the day, I would give The Best Friend a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Like I said, it wasn't my favorite. This one is probably not one I'm going to revisit and reread because I didn't find it super captivating. I thought it was interesting. There were some great moments here and there, but overall, it wasn't my favorite Fear Street book. So there are some more Fear Street books, though, to talk about, and I will be talking about them soon. So until next time, everybody, keep reading. Bye.